Great. Jan, hi. It's so nice to be here with you today.
It's so nice. It's lovely to be here with you. Oh my gosh, this is exciting.
Well, I'm excited too. I have your book here, which we will certainly talk about, The Navigator's Letter. Again, we're speaking with Jan Cress Dondi, who is coming from Florida, who this is her first book. It came out last February, I believe. And like me, Jan has long been interested in both World War II history and family history. And in her case, she turned these wartime letters, hundreds of them, into narrative nonfiction in a really beautiful way, involving some B-24s. I actually found out about this book on social media, so nice work to you and whoever was doing amazing posting on Instagram, Jan, at B-24 Navigators. But let's have you start us off and introduce yourself and the Navigator's Letter.
Oh, great. I'm Jan Cress Dondi. I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The story that I've written, The Navigator's Letter, is the remarkable, true World War II story of luck, fate, and extraordinary coincidences. It follows two young men from the same small Illinois town, John B. and Bob. One was a lawyer, the other was headed to law school when they were called to serve. They each became B-24 navigators, one for the 8th Air Force, one for the 15th Air Force out of Italy. They rose to lead their entire bomber formations into combat, and each flew their final mission over Ploesti, Romania, just months apart, and both were reported missing in action. The book is told through the voices of John B. and Bob. The story unfolds against the backdrop of America's campaign to destroy Hitler's primary fuel source at Ploesti. Victory in World War II depended on one critical element, and that was oil. From the infamous Operation Tidal Wave, which was the first ever zero altitude air raid, to high altitude bombing missions, to the little known Operation Reunion, where 1,200 American prisoners of war were flown from Romania back to American air bases in Italy under protective cover of the Tuskegee Airmen. That's the gist of the book. The book, like you said, is drawn from hundreds of personal letters, but also thousands of documents from the American and German National Archives. But at its heart, The Navigator's Letter is a deeply human story of courage, duty, love, and the role that chance can play in shaping history.
Jen, thank you so much for that. I feel like we may have buried the lead, so I will ask you how you came into this subject and what the deeply personal part really is here, because like you, I can relate to an entry point that feels really personal and familial.
So this is a labor of love. It's a labor of family love. The two men that play the two, or that are the two B-24 navigators, one is my uncle, one is my father, and they followed complete the same parallel paths that seemed to converge at Ploesti, which was Hitler's fuel source. I knew there were some letters, but I thought maybe 10 or 12 or 20 maybe. But when we cleaned out my mother's basement, we found a footlocker filled with probably 500 or 600 letters together with some other things. It was like a treasure chest. And as I read these letters, I felt I had a piece of history in my hands, and I felt like I needed to do something very authentic in a way that John B. and Bob deserved. So I decided to put together originally a book for my cousins because I wasn't a writer
Right.
by
What were you?
trade.
You were
I
working.
was a litigation paralegal all
Yes,
my life.
very organized.
What's that? Yes.
You were very
So
organized. Yes.
the litigation paralegal, I had to read, research, write, interview witnesses, so all that stuff. But writing memorandums is much different than writing a book.
Yes.
It's facts versus a story. And I had to learn a little bit about writing, but I initially wrote it for my cousins. One of the cousins said, "Hey, this is a really good story because it takes the entire campaign with two men,
Right.
um, similar backgrounds, everything." So that's how it started. I found this footlocker of 500 or 600 letters. Each letter would take me on a down a rabbit hole.
Right.
I would
Familiar with those.
Yeah, I know you know. I mean, each letter. I flew in a B-24 Liberator. I wanted to get the feel of what a 20-year-old felt going through that.
Be
I've
very thin to get in there, so it's good that you're slight.
Yeah, right. Well, it was an awesome ride, and
This was the witchcraft.
yes, it was witchcraft. At the time, there were only two flying at the time, and Diamond Little. There might have been a third that's in a private thing, ownership thing. But I traveled to Romania. I spoke with our aviation archaeologist, got a lot of information, got the name of the pilot that took credit for downing Bob's plane.
Right.
I also discovered that that same pilot was in the Bay of Biscay at the same time John B was flying anti-sub patrol over there. I couldn't corroborate it, so it's not in the book. When you write a nonfiction, as you know, everything has to be from primary sources. And I have probably 40 or 50 pages of primary sources in the back, but it was mainly because each letter took me down. But they actually were their bomb group's censorer. All the letters were censored, but they knew how to get through things. Like they would say, I flew over the Colosseum today. Well, I could go to the bomb group records and then compare, oh, that was Rome. So I could
It
develop,
left you some clues.
yeah, yeah.
And Jen,
And
can I ask just what your relationships in your family were like growing up? I know you talk about this in the book, but a lot of us, we wish we had asked all these things and never had the chance. Can you talk about, your experience?
so I think my whole life prepared me to write this story. And maybe for you, the same thing because it's about your grandfather. But when I was little, my father told me bedtime stories, but they weren't fairy tales. They were dive bombing Stukas or daring escapes from POW camp
So
or
calming.
interrogations by erring officers. In Yeah, in high school, I wore a copper POW bracelet for Vietnam, which brought on POW, prisoner of war type conversations. I was always curious. He would always answer the question. We went for walks in the park. He would point out the stars. The North Star will always bring you back home. I wish I'd remembered all the stars that he talked to me about because we go on nightly walks. When I Probably in my 40s or 50s, I asked him more about it. I asked a lot more questions, and he said to read a book. And it was this Ploesti book, The Ground Air Battle. And you can see these are all my sources, and
You
it
read
was a
it.
great source. He said, read the book and then get back. And well, as it turns out, he developed lung cancer. Before he died, we got probably 9 hours of videotape of him discussing raised on a dairy farm and also his missions. And he was very good at words, knew how to write well. So he spoke. I didn't even really ask him questions. He just sort of talked. And so that was a great help. So a lot of the book is written with italics because all of the italics are the men's voices. So I
Right.
hope when the reader reads those italics, they hear Midwestern voices.
Yeah. It's so powerful.
But yeah, that was sort of the journey.
Thank you. Yeah. My grandpa also died of lung cancer. I think all those cigarettes and he could get shot down, survive that, but lung cancer did him in. But for me, reading, you're someone who, like you said, you didn't come at this as a writer by trade or as someone who, had a military history vantage point, but as a daughter. So and a niece. Thank you for the way you share this story and just to um, brag for you a little bit. This is a USA Today bestseller. And that is really driven by you and your dedication to sharing a deeply moving human story that I hope everybody reads. The Navigator's Letter. Again, you can pick it up at your local bookstore or wherever you get your books. You can request your library to have it. I'm honored to have it in a frame with Ortiz's War. Here we go. They have a lot in common, not just the B-24, but really the heart of it. So thank you for this book. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we transition to talking about your World War II rec? Because this is the World War II Recommendation Project.
So, no, but I do want to tell you, my father, Bob, told me one of the first movies that he saw, the original Memphis Belle, was probably closest to the experience that he had. Um, I think he saw the second Memphis Belle, which was more modern,
Mhm.
but so I'm not sure which Memphis Belle he was talking about, but the original one is a black and white. It's a great movie. Everybody should sit down and read it because or see it. It's just a good one to watch.
Such a classic. And again, it really gives you perspective of these airmen and what they went through. And I think now you've seen some modern remakes. You've seen Masters of the Air and a lot of this, really high tech production. But honestly, 12 O'Clock High, um, both the TV show and the film, they were some of the earliest means to share with people who weren't in the bombers or who, like you, didn't ride in the B-24 after the fact. And it's clearly such a specific experience, and it's wild to me that we still um, crave this
So
understanding.
let me tell you a little bit about what it's like in a bomber.
Yes,
So
please.
in the morning, they're given their mission. So they climb into the plane. As they get up to altitude, and it takes about 45 minutes to get up to altitude because they've got to form formation and
Yep, these are the
rendezvous.
standard bombing runs, we should say. So similar to both what your great uncle, sorry, your uncle and your father flew, but for the 8th and the 15th, right? So Europe bombing campaigns, B-24s.
Right, right. Right. You're getting up to altitude at 24,000. It could be minus 60 degrees up there. It could be freezing cold. So you take off your glove if your gun jams and you can get frostbite instantly.
If
Or
you pee, it might
so
freeze.
they're actually they've got a heated suit and they're tethered. Yeah, they're tethered to the plane. They also have an oxygen mask and they're tethered to the canister. They also have headphones that they're tethered to the plane. So they're freezing first and they're tethered to the plane. They get toward the target and there are puffs of flak. It looks like black clouds that you can almost walk on. There's so many of them, but they're lethal shards of shrapnel that a direct hit can take a plane down. So that can make them very nervous. Then, if they make it over the target, if they're lucky enough to make it back, the enemy fighters, ME 109s or FW 190s, are chasing them and they're shooting to kill. They shoot at the gas tank, or if they shoot through the plane, they can hit a hydraulic line and it can go on fire. So the guys are not only shooting up the planes, the enemy planes, they're trying to quell the fires on board. If they're lucky enough to get down to the base, they're met with a shot of whiskey and probably a pack of cigarettes, which started them drinking and smoking. They would go to their tent, maybe pass an empty tent of the guys that they ate breakfast with that morning. They were shot down that day. All they want to do is decompress and they want to write a letter home. Who are you dating? Who's dating who? What'd you eat for dinner? But they always ended with, I better get to bed. And these were 5-page letters. I better get to bed because I'm going back upstairs again tomorrow. So those letters were lifelines home to I think they were psychologically helpful to them. And so I'm lucky to have so many to draw upon. But those guys had it tough. I mean, they had to get normal when they were back down on the ground.
Yeah, again, they had it tough, and the ones they had friends who, they felt like the lucky ones, I think was the experience that I've really taken away. But
Exactly.
at the
And
same
it was
time, mhm.
it was a matter of luck and fate as to what happened to you. It wasn't skill. It was just if a flak hits you, a direct hit, that's it.
Yeah, you wanted a good pilot for sure. But there was a reason why they were recruiting airmen really aggressively. These were, not safe missions, and it was a really bloody, bloody war, and the bloody
Yeah,
hundred.
those pilots
Wow.
could Yeah, those pilots could not they could not move around the flak because they had their wingmen. Their wingtips were probably 50 feet apart, and that's not very far in the air. I'm not sure of that number, but I know that they flew tight formation over the target. And so they couldn't avoid anything. They just had to muscle through it. So yeah, you did. The commander of the ship was the pilot, like your grandfather, and they needed the navigators to show them where to go. So usually the navigators and pilots were very close,
Yep.
just because they depended on one another.
Yeah, and good at math. My grandfather used to always tell my mom, life is math. And it was like, yeah, you want to get those coordinates right. And, it was pre-calculator there. My grandfather's case, they were actually flying late and low and so low, so they could maneuver a bit, but they also, if they were seen, they had no cover. There were no Tuskegee Airmen around to bail you out. It was either a mountain, a cliff that came up, or, enemy fire in my grandfather's case. So these were harrowing journeys that I think ground us in so much of the perspective. Anytime I'm having a bad day, I'm like, I'll be fine. So I don't know if you similarly find yourself thinking of these letters. I'll share one
I
last thing. My grandfather had some letters, and he also had his escape and evasion report. And in it, he was asked. He was the first one back, thanks in large part to Peter Ortiz back here, who, among other French resistance and SOE and OSS agents, helped him back. And he was writing down on the report, "Do you have any advice for future evaders?" And these are guys who, work on these missions. What can you tell them about getting away? And having their lives spared. And he wrote, yes, be patient, think before making a move. You have more time than you think. And to me, that is just, it's life advice that I should take more, because if he could do it, I can too. So, Memphis Belle is a great movie. I hope everybody enjoys both versions. And Jan, again, you've written a wonderful book. I'm so impressed by the way you've put it all together and shared it. And thank you for being an inspiration for me too, as I learn to surface and share these stories and post more than I'm naturally inclined to post because it's important. So thank you for that.
Thank you and good luck to you. I know it's going to be a wonderful Ortiz's War. It's got to be great.